City of Kalamazoo Zoning Board of Appeals, a volunteer board appointed by the City Commission. Tonight's meeting is being held electronically and is being streamed live on the city's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Pete, will you conduct a roll call for attendance?
Yes, we'll start with Carol.
I'm present in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Ms. Doan.
Present in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Ms. Vanden Hamburg.
Oh, you're muted, Beth.
You're
Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Ms. Harrington.
Present in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And Mr. Turpinning.
Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And Chair Lager.
Present. I'm a resident of the city of Kalamazoo. Tonight I'm in Ross Township, Kalamazoo County, Michigan.
All right. Thank you.
Pete, are there any announcements or changes to the agenda tonight?
There are no announcements or changes tonight.
And for anyone that is viewing this, there's a box on the Zoom that's got the phone number to call to leave a comment. That number is 269-226-6573. Let me say that again. 269-226-6573.
Mute my audio.
6573. Okay. We'll move on to the acceptance of last month's minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the February minutes.
Is there a second?
Beth is trying to second.
I second that.
Second. All right. All in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Audio now unmuted.
Aye. And opposed, same sign. All right. The minutes pass. I will now explain our procedure for tonight's public hearing. For each request, the secretary will read the application into the public record. The applicant or representative will then have 10 minutes to provide their comments. Following that, public comments received via phone will be aired for the panelists and audience. If the viewing or listening audience would like to comment on one of the public hearings, you can do so at the number I mentioned earlier, 269-226-6573, and leave a recording. Comments received for the public hearing will be played before the conclusion of the specific public hearing for which they're left for. After all public comments are listened to, we will close the public hearing on the request. Once the public hearing is closed, the board will then conduct what is called a finding of fact, where the board states what they feel are the facts of the request. The board must approve the finding of fact first. Therefore, the first vote you hear is not a ruling on the request, but the finding of fact. After that, the board discusses the request in order to determine a ruling. The board reserves the privilege to ask questions of people who have already spoken, even though the public comment portion is closed. Once the discussion is ended, the board will move on to a roll call vote. A full board consists of 6 members, and there are 6 members here tonight, with 4 votes required to grant a variance or any other type of request. Now we'll have our first applicant. Christina, will you read the first application into the record, please?
Certainly. One moment, please.
Yep.
The applicant is requesting a use variance from Chapter 4, Section 4.1 to utilize this property for short-term rentals or lodging as defined by the zoning ordinance. This use ordinance will allow for the rent of the house, which is permitted this is a request for variance only regarding the item described above. Did that all come through okay?
Christina, parts of that didn't come
Did you
through.
hear all of that? I had a
we-
little trouble.
No, there were parts in the middle. Could you try streaming without the video and see if you get more bandwidth for audio?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
that is the request number 2 on the public hearings that's being read. That's the one for Winchester Place.
Oh, it's
The
listed
first
as number
item
1
is
on my list. I'm
the
sorry.
Kalamazoo College request.
Okay, so it's listed, sorry, it's listed as first on my list. Let me switch to the next one. Apologies for that.
nope, you're good. Are you still there, Christina?
Yeah, I'm still here, but I think I was sent the wrong packet. I have September 10th, 2020. So that could explain why I don't have the right cases in front of me.
Mr. Chair, I can read it.
Okay,
Could someone send me the updated packet just to make sure? And yes, it's probably a good idea if Jeff reads it so we're not delayed.
Yeah, yes, I can forward you the correct link.
Thank
okay.
you.
In the meantime, Jeff, could you please read it into the record?
Yes, sir. An application for a variance has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by Kalamazoo College, owners of 1600 and 1708 West Michigan Avenue and 500 Burroughs Road, which are situated in Zone IC, Institutional Campus District. The applicant is requesting a use variance from Ordinance 1896. The ordinance approved by the City Commission in 2012 established limits on use of the soccer field and football field lights for the Kalamazoo College Athletic Complex. The COVID-19 pandemic has altered the collegiate sports calendar, and 7 sports teams will practice and compete in the spring and fall of 2021. Kalamazoo College is requesting a use variance to allow for 105 nights of light use on the soccer field, where the current limit is 60, a 75% increase, and 35 nights of light use on the football field, where the current limit is 20, a 75% increase for the 2021 calendar year. Please note that this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the items described above.
All right, thank you. And will the applicant now please explain the request?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening and for your consideration of our request for a variance. My name is Greg Diamond. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Kalamazoo College. I'm also the neighborhood liaison to the West Main Hill Neighborhood Association. Kalamazoo College seeks a variance to allow additional use of our stadium lights in the calendar year 2021. We seek this variance due to the impacts of the pandemic. As you know from the staff report, one of the restrictions on our use of the stadium lights is a cap on the number of times we can turn the lights on in a calendar year. Last fall, our sports seasons were canceled, and therefore we also did not use the stadium lights in the fall. Our sports conference, the MIAA, has rescheduled fall sports to happen this spring, concurrent with the spring sports. For this reason, we need additional use of the lights during the 2021 calendar year only. We would continue to comply with all of the other conditions noted in the ordinance, including the time at which they must be turned off. Before submitting our request to you, I wrote to each of the 47 neighbors that are located within 300 feet of the athletic fields, letting them know of our need and planned request. I heard back directly from 2. One said, and I quote, "I wish the college great success with having the students back on campus. And personally, I think your request is completely reasonable under these extraordinary circumstances." end quote. The other wrote, quote, "Thanks for your recent letter regarding Kay's variance request. In view of the pandemic, we have no objections to this request," end quote. I also met with the board of the West Main Hill Neighborhood Association, as I do every month, and they voted unanimously to support our variance request, as indicated their support in the letter to the city, which should be in your packet. We've been good neighbors during the last 9 years since the lights were first installed, complying with all of the conditions imposed. As I mentioned, I have met regularly with the West Main Hill Board to provide an opportunity to hear their feedback and address any concerns about the lights or any other topic associated with Kalamazoo College. Our athletic director, Becky Hall, and her staff have carefully considered the minimum required variance to support our athletic team practices and competitions in this very unique calendar year 2021. And I would like to ask Becky to say a few words in our remaining time.
Thank you, Greg. And I share Greg's sentiments with my gratitude to all of you for allowing us to speak to you during these very challenging times. As he said, we would have not guessed that we would have been in this position, right? Having all of our fall sports moved to the spring, coming in front of you and asking for a little bit of leniency and latitude in providing us an opportunity to provide for our hardworking, deserving student athletes an opportunity, quite frankly, to be out on their fields, to compete, to continue to live and work for the passions in which they came to this wonderful city. And I'm a new person to the city. This is only my third year here in Kalamazoo, but I asked some of our athletes, why do you like Kalamazoo? What is so intriguing about this place? And one athlete said, we have a strong supportive community and we love seeing them and having them out at our games and contests and seeing them around town. Even though you don't see a lot of K orange, you see mostly Western Michigan brown and gold. We're working on that, folks. But, our student athletes appreciate the community that we're in. We have been testing them pretty much nonstop since January when we started in order to not only protect them, but to protect our community. We've put forth some really stringent policies, from social to athletic to academic, here on campus once we were able to bring them back in January. So, moving 7 sports, essentially competing on 2 fields in the same season within a 5-month, 4-month time period, it's a stretch. It's a lot for our staff and our students to do. And having these limited light days is really a challenge for us, one that we're really trying to overcome at this point. We've been very cautious about our light usage. In fact, on days like we've had here where, it's beautiful out, I just keep telling them we are limited to this until we're given more. So we have to be extremely cautious with that. And so we've kept them in the gym or we've not permitted them out with the lights. And now we're moving into the season of competition. And so it's going to be really tough and a competitive disadvantage for our kids to be in the gym and not out on fields because we don't have extra opportunities. And we're not so concerned about the spring as we are about what the fall will bring because it's the calendar year. So if we use them all up now, we won't have any for the fall. And that will then affect essentially 3 seasons due to COVID. So we're just asking for a little gratitude, a little latitude here to allow us this 75% increase. As Greg said, we'll still stick with the lights being off at the correct times. We've not breached that. We've not exceeded those expectations. So one of our student athletes also, he said, and I quote, that Kalamazoo is one of the best places in the world to become a contributing member of society. So we hope that you'll vote in favor and give us this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or ask or anything to ask Ms. Hall or Mr. Dement? No? Hearing nothing. Pete, are there any staff comments?
Yeah, I just want to make a few quick comments here. I think Mr. Diamond And Ms. Hall covered almost everything, but I just wanted to, reiterate that this, the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely dealt us, some unique circumstances that we've been grappling with for over a year. And because the allowed, lighting usage is governed by this ordinance 1896 that was passed when the campus was rezoned to the institutional campus category. And that was back when that occurred in 2012. That was looked at as kind of a fallback provision. Everyone anticipated that there would be a stadium lighting ordinance in place by the end of 2015, and that did not happen. Which, if we had a stadium lighting ordinance, there may have been a little more flexibility. It might still have ended up in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals this evening, even with a stadium lighting ordinance. But as it stands, the way the provisions are written, limiting specifically how many nights of usage for lighting on the soccer field and football field, the only way to gain any additional light usage is through a use variance process. So, and I want to mention that this again is just for the calendar year 2021. So this is a use variance, but it is for a limited period of time. And K College has made that very clear in their application. And the timing of the lights will be shut off on the soccer field by 10:30 and the football field by 8:30, just as stated in Ordinance 1896. So the turn off times will remain the same. This is just additional nights of usage. So that's all I have from the staff standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Does anyone have a question for Pete or anything they thought of that they'd like to ask the applicant? Hearing nothing. Could we move to the, oh, I'm sorry, let me get my procedures up. I'm working with one screen tonight.
I can read the finding of fact.
We need to see if there's any public.
Yeah, we need to open it for public comments. Are there any public comments?
No public comments at this time.
All right. Jeff, could you do the motion on finding of fact?
I move that the finding of fact for 1600 and 1708 West Michigan Avenue and 500 Burroughs Road shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing dated February 24th, 2021. 48 notices of public hearing were sent and one response was received and is part of the record. It is a letter of support from the West Main Hill Neighborhood Association. A public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. There were no additional documents presented at the meeting. The finding of fact shall include those documents described in the packet and also the facts and comments made during the public hearing, which are summarized as follows. Becky Hall and Greg Dement, employees of Kalamazoo College, spoke on behalf of the application. The variance request is a result of COVID-19 cancellation of fall sports. The Collegiate Sport Governing Association that they partner with has rescheduled fall sports to the spring of 2021. They plan on adhering to all established turn-off times per the ordinance. Mr. Dement mentioned approaching, I think, 46. If it was 47, I apologize. Neighbors contacted for feedback. 2 of them replied with overwhelming support. The West Main Hill Association was contacted and supports the variance request as evidenced by conversations and written response. And that concludes the finding of fact.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor of the finding of fact signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed, same sign. All right, the finding of fact is approved. Now we'll open it for discussion amongst the board. Who'd like to start? So on this matter, I'll be voting in favor of this. I think the criteria we look at with regard to granting variance asks us to consider special circumstances. And as we all know, we are under special circumstances right now. And it sounds like it's affected Kalamazoo College schedulers quite significantly, as well as the athletes, not to mention the athletes. With the special circumstances, the uniqueness of this ordinance that's specific to this situation, the lighting on the fields, and the lack of any opposition whatsoever that's been voiced from neighbors and the support of the West Main Hill Authority, I'm confident that this is a solution that works great for the community, and we'll be happy to vote in favor of this.
I'd like to echo that, as well as the fact that it's a limited one for 2021 only. So it's not something that's going to go on indefinitely. It's just for the special circumstances to kind of catch up, as it were. So I'll be in favor.
Thank you for adding that. That was my comment as well.
Thank you, Christina. And Matt.
I have a question. Are the games open to the public, or are the student athletes going to be playing against student athletes only during the time that you're doing this? How are you guys approaching your athletic season?
Thank you. That's a good question. We are permitting each athlete to have 3 people present for them, whether that's family, friends, community, whomever they choose, as long as they designate it early. They provide contact tracing phone numbers, and then we have them undergo a health screening survey upon entrance into our facility.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Is there any further discussion before we turn to a roll call vote?
Mr. Chair, has there been a motion to approve? I don't know that there has been.
Oh, I think you're right. Ms. Doan, let's see if your audio works for you.
All right. I'm going to turn off my video just in case.
Okay.
Okay, so the applicant is requesting a use variance. Use variance from ordinance 1896. This ordinance, approved by the City Commission in 2012, established limits on use of the soccer field and football field lights for Kalamazoo College Athletic Complex. The COVID-19 pandemic has altered the college sports calendar, and 7 sports teams will practice and compete in the spring and fall of 2021. Kalamazoo College is requesting a use variance to allow for 105 nights of light use on the soccer field, where the current limit is 60, 75% increase, and 35 nights of light use on the football field, where the current limit is 20, 75% increase for the 2021 calendar year. Please note that the request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only for the item described above.
So that's a motion to approve?
A motion to approve that, yes.
Okay. And is there a second?
I second that.
All right, thank you. Pete, let's do a roll call vote.
We'll start with Carol,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Turpinning,
Yes.
Lager.
Yes. The request is granted. Good luck this season. Go Hornets.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. All right,
Okay, Hall,
Christina.
Kalamazoo College left.
Oh. Christina, can you read the next case into the record?
Yes, one moment.
Greg Diment, K College left.
So this is the 625 Winchester Place, yes?
Yes.
Okay. The applicant, an application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by Rob Lekis and Megan Anderson, owners of 625 Winchester Place, which is situated in Zone RD 19 Residential Duplex District. The applicants reside in the south side of the duplex and are requesting a use variance for the north side to allow for short-term rental or lodging land use for this property located in Zone RD 19, where rentals are limited to 30 days or more under the definition of household living. Please note this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the item described above. Did all of that come through?
That did, thank you.
Okay.
All right, applicant, this is your opportunity.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you well.
Great. Yeah, first, good evening, zoning board, chair, and members. My name is Rob Lekis, and I'm here with my spouse, Megan Anderson. We do live at the duplex property at 623-625 Winchester Place on the west side of Kalamazoo. We're grateful to meet with you all tonight in order to give you an opportunity to get to know us a little bit better, and ideally for you all to get a better understanding of why we're hoping you could really help us out by approving this variance for a short-term rental. After living the last few years in Idaho, Megan and I moved to Kalamazoo in 2019. She found a promising career opportunity, which would put us much closer to both of our parents who live in Illinois. So it was now drivable instead of flight home. Unfortunately, Megan's mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2018, and just before I received the news, my father was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's later that same year. As a fellow veteran of the Marine Corps, my dad values my ability to help him navigate his treatment at the local VA hospital on a monthly basis, which is often I have to drive back there. When we began our home search in Kalamazoo, we knew we wanted to find something that had the flexibility to absorb them under our roof, but still allow them some semblance of independence should the need arise. We were grateful when we were able to close on our current home because it has the flexibility for all of our foreseeable future needs. However, it was unfortunately in need of some major repairs, which City Inspector Ms. Yvonne Wright was also pretty familiar with as I worked with her from pretty early on. Since we became the owner occupants, we've invested a significant amount of money, nearly $100,000 to make it a more livable property, but it's also complemented the mixed use neighborhood. Mr. Eldridge has been most helpful walking me through the application for use variance. So I'd like to take a brief moment to address the concerns as I understand them. The first issue is the rights commonly enjoyed by other land in our zone district is for a long-term tenancy of 30 days or more. We're requesting this variance because we believe it would be unnecessarily complicated to enter into a long-term lease only for us to ask that tenant to break the lease so we could accommodate either one of the parents who may need our close supervision on short notice. The second point, there are unnecessary hardships based on special circumstances. As previously mentioned, we believe the mixed zone use of our duplex neighborhood should be open to short-term rentals due to its proximity to the highway, and it's only 300 feet from the commercial zone along West Main. The third point in the application, the special circumstances are not a result of the applicant. In this case, it's really our parents who understandably would prefer to have the option to live with us, their adult children, rather than a nursing home option, which so many of us are, or so many nursing homes are in questionable management with the COVID era. The fourth point, the granting of this variance is the minimum action that will make possible the use of land or structure that is not contrary to public interest. We believe this variance would be the minimum action needed to satisfy our needs. As many of the duplexes in the zone are owner occupied, we would support a broader rezoning for short-term tenants, given the care and attention our fellow owner occupants in the neighborhood have. We also don't feel our application is contrary to the public interest, given the letters of support Mr. Eldridge has said he's received. The fifth point, granting a variance will not adversely affect the adjacent land in a material way. On the contrary, I believe we have only improved the property, which in turn has assuaged all the concerns of property owners on adjacent lands, as we believe neighbors have mentioned in their letters of support. And the last point in the application, the granting of the variance will be generally consistent with the purposes and intent of the ordinance. The granting of this variance will, we believe, be nearly noticeable versus the current long-term zoning. We will be vigilant to ensure any short-term tenants will occupy the property no different than a long-term tenant would. We live on the other side, so we'll monitor closely. We'll make sure that there's no problems. And if anything does happen, we'll be right there to observe and handle as soon as we see it. So in conclusion, we'd like to thank you again for your consideration of our application this evening, and we hope to move forward in a way that leaves all parties satisfied. But if you have any questions or concerns, we of course would be happy to answer them for you.
Thanks. Are there any questions?
Is the rental unit rented now?
No, it's not rented.
Not rented. We're kind of using it to work from, so it's not rented, no.
And
So-
have you tried any short-term rentals there yet?
No, if we want to.
Not less than 30 days, no.
Have you had renters for more than 30 days?
Yes.
Mr. Eldridge, what is the intent of the ordinance?
Well, the intent of the ordinance is to restrict in residential zone districts the use of dwellings for household living. Household living is defined as 30 days or more. So whether, so that could be a month to month, that could be 6-month leases, that could be annual leases for rental properties or rental units. But once we get into that less than 30-day category, that's looked at under the ordinance as lodging. So that would be like a bed and breakfast, a hotel, or a motel. If you're doing a couple nights here and there or whatnot, I mean, that's really, it's temporary, housing or lodging is what that's defined as by the ordinance.
So the intent of the ordinance is not to have lodging under 30 days. That's the intent.
Yeah, so the intent is to keep those sort of lodging type uses in more intensive commercial, more intensive zone districts like the commercial districts, versus the residential zone districts.
And so in the city of Kalamazoo, most residential does not have the right to do less than 30 days.
That's correct.
And these pop-up applicants, this is not the first application for this, as you can imagine. But the city has not indicated that they want to move in the direction of, as you can tell by the intent of the ordinance, they haven't made any indication that they're going to change and that they believe most people in Kalamazoo should be able to rent for less than 30 days. Mr. Eldridge, is there any intent of the city suggesting or changing the ordinance, or what is their recommendation for this scenario?
There is and has been, discussion in the past about that. the more intensive residential zone districts would be the zone districts looked at for, possibly a special use permit for short-term rentals. But there's, that is still under discussion. I can't say that we're getting, any big push on this, on this front to craft an ordinance, but it is being talked about because every so often we get variance requests like this in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we're trying to, figure out, of course, I think part of it is the whole, COVID-19 has really, upended, the short-term rental industry, which is, now getting back on its feet. So, at this point, like I said, it's something that's being talked about, but there isn't anything in the works.
Applicants, have you thought about a strategy that other landlords, I'm a landlord as well, in Kalamazoo and in other municipalities that forbid Airbnb type scenarios? A common strategy is month to month, or having a 90-day no cause clause, so that if you need your, let's say I have a condo here and I want to occupy it, I give 90 days notice and the contract's over and I can occupy it again. Are those strategies something you would want to avail yourself to instead of this variance?
I think we would. It's just this seems like the best catch-all to have the flexibility that we're really looking for.
Yeah, and I would further his point, just given his father's condition in particular is accelerating really quickly. He actually just came to visit recently because we had literally had 1 day's notice to go get him. And we just can't, with the type of care he needs, it's very hands-on, it's very intense, it's very sad, of course. But it just is the case. It would be very disruptive to anybody else trying to occupy the property for any amount of time. So for us, this gives us the maximum amount of control for those types of situations. But I do appreciate your question.
Yeah, one more tough question. You're in a tough situation. I've got a father in Phoenix who's similar situation. I completely sympathize. It's just that we sit on a board that has to take public interest at heart and private interest at the same time. So tough question. You're not going to be the only one in the city in this situation, or a teenager coming back from college, or, there's probably 100 different reasons why somebody would need to occupy a dwelling quickly. If we grant this, do you think we should grant this for everybody in the city? And if that's the case, should we repeal the ordinance?
Comment first.
Yeah, I couldn't really be qualified to speak for everyone. I'm really just concerned with the issues that I brought up. And I mean, obviously this is really close to home for us. I guess I would defer to the city and the needs of the citizens.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah, and then just to further Rob's point, because we agree, we're relatively new to Kalamazoo, so it's difficult to be able to comment specifically with any historical context. However, given the nature of the investment we've made in this property, just to restate, we've invested over $100,000 of our own money to make this a very nice, attractive place in the neighborhood. Therefore, it wasn't difficult to get the support of others. And I think that whenever you're considering changing any type of ordinance, it's really about the support of others that is representative of how maybe the fulfillment of your decision, right? And for us, I was actually just pleasantly shocked and surprised at the support from our neighborhood. I mean, these are people that, we live just normally like anybody else in any other neighborhood. Our kids play together. We help each other out. They're shoveling our driveways if we have to scoot out of town to take care of our parents. And we've only lived here since 2019. So I think it says a lot about the citizens, not only of our neighborhood, but of this city. I've moved 57 times since 2000, and this is one of the best places that we've ever lived. And we intend to own this property as long as we're alive. That's how valuable it is to us. And we stood up behind that not only in our investments, but with the relationships we've built in this town. Rob sits on a city committee already, so we're actively involved in the community, and we do have the best interests of all citizens of Kalamazoo in mind. But unfortunately not the context maybe to make a larger recommendation, but just to give you an understanding of how committed we are to trying to do the right thing for the community. Did that answer your question?
As good as you're going to answer it.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Yeah.
So may I ask, so if the variance is granted, will you use some sort of online booking system like Airbnb to find the tenants, short-term tenants?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as many ways as we can market it, that helps, attractively showcase the property. We're looking at multiple platforms that, again, just allow for the most flexibility and insights and protections that anybody who owns a home who's going to allow somebody else to stay there deserves. Do you have any further comments?
Yeah, I think we just want to be, obviously, because we're so close, we share a wall with it. Everything, we want to find the most responsible way to do it. Obviously, there's some online sites that are more responsible, require background checks and things like that. Yeah. But at the same time, after the investment we made, if we're going to be absorbing one, possibly two parents in the future, those come with associated costs, not to mention the investment we've already made. So I mean, we're really just trying to, cover our losses and prepare for the inevitable, I guess.
Thank you.
All right, I have some questions. First, I would like to just go over just a very brief, my understanding of what it is you're looking for. So essentially, you live in a duplex on Winchester Place, and you spent $100,000 and remodeled and put all this work into this other section, the other side of it.
Both sides, yeah, the whole property. Yep.
The whole property. Okay, so you've put $100,000 into this, into your home, into this investment, and it's zoned for residential. And if you have renters, they have to be long-term, not short-term. So you're living in a residential neighborhood on a street with some duplexes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, all right. And so they only have the ordinances for long-term, more than 30 days. And you want to have it for short-term. Okay. And then your parents have some special needs, each one of you. So there's two people, and you want to rent out. So short-term, less than 30 days, weekends, Airbnb, to different people, and then kind of mix it up. When your parents need help, they come stay. And then when they're not there, you rent it out.
Yes.
Be good. Okay. I guess, I mean, I feel for you. I think that idea is great. I just have some concerns with, if this is approved, we would be making an exception for your home that's in a residential single dwelling family home neighborhood. So what happens when you move?
It runs with the land. So the variance sticks with this house when they move.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So you move, so somebody else comes in, and I mean, what if they're not as vigilant? I don't know.
I definitely, I think I understand your concern. But as we mentioned, we grew up in Chicago. That's kind of where our family is. And so the progression would be that the family would move here. And as we mentioned earlier, we don't have any intention of selling this property. So yeah, and obviously we made the investment so we could live comfortably here. I mean, we're pretty modest. So, I mean, this has enough space for our current family and to absorb the aging parents. So yeah, given the investment and the location, I don't think I can say that we're not interested in selling it.
Yeah, from a risk, I guess from a risk standpoint, we are confident in stepping forward, asking for the variance based on that fact. And I love the fact you asked that, because that, to me, that was a key difference of, are we just an investor trying to make some money, or are we doing this for the long term and building a story, which is why we're in front of you guys asking for this exception. And so, you know, there's never 100% guarantee we're never going to sell, because we can't predict the future. But given the gravity of the investment we wanted that, plus the support of the neighborhood, to reflect, you know, the reality and the low chance that the scenario that you're discussing right now would come to light. But that's a great question to ask, for sure.
And maybe Mr. Eldridge can explain a little better. It's not really just like a street of duplexes. It's kind of like a transition neighborhood in between the commercial zone on Main Street, which is essentially in our backyard, and the single family homes. So we're kind of in a weird subdivision, I guess, where we're not surrounded by single family as much as the duplex little whatever the builders were trying to go for. But all the adjacent properties, we've met with them, we've spoken with them, and I believe most of the letters you've received, if you've been able to see them, are from the properties that border our property. In support, I hope. I think, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we have seen those. Thank you. Are there any additional questions?
I guess I do have questions. As a user of Airbnb or other booking sites that could possibly be short-term or long-term booking, as far as I could find something for this weekend or find something 2 months from now, I would think that with an early cancellation or a cancellation based on less than a month notice for somebody to find something, you would have a great difficulty with that. But my question, I guess, overall, and I thank you for your guys' service, your family, obviously, but not to say that the VA moves at a glacial pace or that there might not be a super medical emergency immediately, but is 1 month an unexpectable timeline to allow for somebody to vacate the property? Or would it be just that you maybe you don't want them to settle knowing that there might be that possibility?
I mean, I can speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another great clarifying question. So in this case, in this instance, that I like the example that I just gave, that's really what we found was the sort of red thread. Was, as we mentioned, we did have a more than 30-day rental agreement prior, but we knew those folks were trying to relocate, so we sort of tested it out, and it caused a lot of challenges when we did have these emergency situations where his dad needs help right now and there's no one there to step in. And similarly, just with some of the other complexities, I work for an internationally held firm now, so I do travel, and we have 2 young children. So on the contrary, sometimes we just need people to be able to come and help with our kids on in last minute sort of scenarios and situations. So for us, holistically, as we evaluated it, it just became more and more financially difficult for us, actually, as we looked into it. It was costing us more money to accommodate for all of these circumstances than it was worth. And we just couldn't, given the gravity of the investment we made right away coming in here for long-term sort of financial stability, this is the best option for us, because we can, I know now exactly how much money we need to spend, and anything else we're able to bring back is just assisting the situation, as opposed to kind of starting and stopping, having to market it again, interview people, run the credit and background checks. It gets quite costly, actually. So this gives us, again, the guarantees of background checks on people that are sort of built into the services. So that actually helped reduce the overall cost to us as we move throughout the process.
And to your point, that trial period we did, I think it was like 6 months or something, and it was it was a couple, but I think everyone, the move-in process and the move-out process, they definitely thought they had less than they did, and it was a lengthier kind of move in, move out than we had expected, for sure. So to offer some sort of furnished thing, we would know that exactly what's there is there, and there's no, oh, the moving van canceled, or my buddy with his truck canceled or something. So, but yeah, the VA, I guess, there's a lot more complications in the background that I didn't want to exactly get into, but it would be a
hardship.
Yeah, it would be hard to not give them the support they need right away.
Yeah, very good. Pete, are there any staff comments?
Was Jeremy done?
Yeah,
Jeremy?
I'm done.
Oh,
Yes.
thanks, Jeremy.
I have a follow-up question then. Did you happen to do your research on whether short-term was available as an ordinance right before you purchased?
Did I check? No, I mean, our first concern was finding a place for ourselves, I guess, and maybe we were a little pie in the sky assuming, but regardless of it, it fit our needs for residents, for my wife and kids. And then the opportunity looked like it was there to take on the parents when they needed it. But then I did want to do my due diligence, and I think before the pandemic, the housing market was a little faster, that we needed to act without doing all the research. But yeah, it's
true.
Yeah.
The reason for my question is some people do review ordinances and other things before they move in. It's called Clyde might correct me, all the entitlements. Before you buy a property, you make sure you have everything lined up. Let's say you're doing marijuana. You want to make sure you have the ability to do marijuana sales where you're buying. Many people do that, and they check the ordinances and, I want to buy in a neighborhood where there's no short-term Airbnb type stuff. That's where I'm going to buy because that's what the ordinance says.
Yeah.
So I quizzed staff this afternoon. If we granted this variance, how would somebody that's doing their due diligence know that this variance existed on your property and that they would be buying into? You have good neighbors now, but maybe the next person doesn't want to live in a neighborhood that has short terms. How would they know? And the answer was it'd be very hard. It would be a FOIA request, or you'd have to call the city, or you'd have to do a title search. And I don't think the average person would even think to do a FOIA request or a title search to check properties 2 or 3 houses down to see if they have a variance against the master ordinance. So that's why I asked the question is how would you have known? How would people buying in this neighborhood know that the master ordinance says no, but there's one house right next door that is yes? So that's one of the concerns I had. How would people know? But thank you for the answer.
I mean, I think,
I'm sorry.
all right.
Is that it? Are there any other questions?
I have a question and a statement. I think that this is a new way that millennial sandwich generationers are trying to locate options to be able to be sustainable for themselves as they're raising children and caring for aging parents. I want to know what your perspective is on the fair housing practices attached to these types of short-term rentals, and how precedent setting this will be. Mr. Carroll outlined, are you requesting that you kind of shift the entire ordinance? Are you asking that we repeal the entire ordinance? I want to know, I think it's personally genius. My own mother transitioned from congestive heart failure. I'm a single mother. These are the types of options that I ended up living with my mom and just having a place on my own. It was she was a vet also. It's difficult. So I understand and I get it. And I would like to think that these types of options would be brainstormed for just in a multitudinous way for people that are addressing these types of issues for sustainability. Again, the fair housing practices, and how precedent setting is this going to be? Maybe the city attorney can speak to that.
It actually does seem like a question for staff. So let's close the portion of that hearing, and let's move this to staff comments. And Pete, could you start with Remy's comments?
Well, I guess the first thing I want to say is this, this is a variance specific to this particular property. So it's not a precedent setting, manner in that. However, I think what Mr. Carroll was getting at is if the board approves variances without that don't adequately meet the criteria for unique circumstance and hardship, that it creates a situation where others are then going to be inclined to ask for the same variance. And then that in turn creates this snowball effect where it waters down, it dilutes, the ordinance as it's written. But these are to be a case by case evaluation of the ordinance and the property in question and the circumstances surrounding that property. So that was the first part. As far as fair housing practices, I mean, short-term rentals are really a means of commercial. It's just a more commercialized form of finding lodging. It's an alternative to making a reservation at a hotel. And I know that there's a lot of individuals that financially do quite well with short-term rentals, but obviously that's not, that constant turnover of different folks, going in and out of a dwelling unit is not what is desired in most neighborhoods, and that's why there are limits in the ordinance on this form of short-term rental versus month-to-month living. So, I don't know how else to, I don't know if that really doesn't answer your question about the fair housing aspect.
Well, just the fact that people do leverage short-term rentals in that way to accommodate their very unique, just like this is a very unique circumstance and approach to managing some very specific and family specific things that are happening with this that absolutely have implications for a wide set of people, including like myself. And, we've all, many of us on this call have outlined that we can relate to these very specific circumstances. And in terms of the approach to short-term housing, like a lot of people also are going to be leveraging short-term housing as a means and a modality for their own unique circumstances. I'm sorry.
I think it was the computer talking.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep. Go right
okay.
ahead.
So those are still, it's like, and I don't know if this is the time and space to have that conversation about how do we, ensure that, because I think that there's a lot of unsaid de facto rules and things that we're addressing that we're not addressing in terms of who can choose to stay in these short-term spaces for this time in this particular neighborhood, this very nice neighborhood. Like, who can come and stay here, and who do we choose to stay here, and how are we addressing that? And I think that, again, when I'm talking about the precedent that's being set, this is a very specific property, like you're saying, this specific property, we can do this in this place. Well, other people in our community, throughout our community, and in the variety of neighborhoods that we live in that have, a lot of people live a lot of different kind of ways in Kalamazoo. if we do this for, and I'm for it, I'm going to vote okay for this. I am. And I'm saying like this opens up the opportunity for other people to do this in a variety of different ways too. And these things will be informed by a lot of different ways that people, and that's one of the city's, priority areas right now is fair housing. So this opens that up, and I just want us to be aware of that, but there is a fair housing implication to this.
Beautifully said.
So, just to add to that, this is not about who, is going to be allowed to come and stay there. It's about how long. We're talking about the length of time. And, this is still a rental dwelling that's available for rent. So that is a constant. That's not changing whether this is granted or not tonight. But I think the reason, other reasons behind why this ordinance is in place is because of, many folks look at this as a commercialization of residential property when you're allowed to turn over your tenancy, every weekend or every few days with a new group of people staying there. And sometimes it has not been a problem. In other times, the city offices get complaints about, groups that are, in town staying in these Airbnb locations and, causing noise disturbances and other issues, parking problems. So it's a mixed bag. It's as far as that's why I said it's been discussed as far as how should we handle this going forward. But there's been no decision made, no draft ordinance put together at this point. But I really don't think it's fair to put this in the same category as limiting available housing, because this other half of the duplex, is an available, rental unit, is a certified rental unit. So anyways, that's all I have to add on that. I think I've covered it.
Thank you.
And if I could just speak to it, I think, there's a strong argument that a short-term rental is actually less disruptive. Because when we moved in this place, the unit that we moved into, they had a junk car that was inoperable from the driveway. There was somebody smoking in the residence that was not authorized. There were 2 squatters. So we had to scrub all the cigarette smoke out of it. We had to get the inoperable car removed. And with the short term, we're cleaning it much more regularly. We're getting eyes on it much more regularly. Nobody's getting comfortable enough to, get large items and leave them there. I think that's just a positive of the short term.
And my final comment would just be on the back of what Ms. Harrington said, because I actually heard her talking about the broader issue of sustainability in our community. And I heard you on that, and really support that idea. And in the event, and hopefully this is approved, we would certainly be interested in participating in that conversation, because I 100% agree with you. I think this is an issue we're going to continue to see a need for in a post-COVID world, with more flexibility for aging families and parents, and other people may need similar, types of abilities depending on their situation. And it sounds like you had a similar one as well. So I really do appreciate you saying that and bringing that, because I see, to Peter's explanation, how you can view it very through one lens of just the timing, but this is about a more holistic, broader issue affecting our community. And I understand that, and I would be supportive of talking about that in a broader group.
And thank you. And that's what I was speaking to. Absolutely. Thank you for understanding that.
My better half for a reason.
All right. Are there any public comments?
No public comments at this time.
All right, we'll close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion on the finding of fact. Beth, is that you? Oh, you're on mute still.
Okay. All right. I move that the finding.
Audio now unmuted.
Okay, I move that the finding of fact for 625 Winchester Place shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing dated February 24th of 2021. 34 notices of public hearing were sent and 3 responses were received and are part of the record. A letter of support from Ann Weimers, a letter of support from Chad Labrie, and a letter of support from David.
My audio button.
From David and Nicole Reed. A public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. The finding of facts shall include those documents just described and also the facts and comments made during the public hearing, which are summarized as follows. Rob Likas and Megan Anderson both have parents with special needs. They've purchased a duplex on Winchester Place, and they've spent $100,000 renovating both sides of it. They've invested in the home. Some of their thoughts and concerns were that a long-term lease is simply not feasible for them with their parents and folks needing quick care, emergency care, in and out. When they do not have a family member living next door in the duplex, they would like to be able to rent that out as an Airbnb type situation. They're 300 feet, the street, their home is 300 feet off of West Main. This situation, this application, it's not the result of anything that they have done. It's parents, they feel that minimum action would be taken, that this doesn't cause any adversity for the adjacent land, and that it would be consistent with the other, how the property is being used. The home is not being rented now, the other side of the duplex. It's being used as a place to work. Have they tried a short-term rental? No. And then I'm not sure of this portion. So you hadn't tried having the short-term rental on the duplex, but have you tried more than 30 days?
This is the motion on the fact. Let's just keep it to the fact and not ask questions.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Yep. Just go over that. Okay. The intent of the dwelling is more than 30 days. Zoning does not have the right to do at this point less than 30 days. Intent of the ordinance is to keep lodging at no more than 30 days. Looking for more control in managing the situation. There was some concern expressed over the property variance, if it's granted, what happens when the property is sold. Emergency situations, again, need it to be flexible, feasible. Was any research done before the home was purchased about short-term, long-term investment property, that kind of thing? No. Some discussion about millennial sandwich issues, fair housing practices, sustainability, short-term rental means of alternative lodging. It's not always desirable. Property owners, again, fair housing concerns. This is about how long someone can stay and not who can stay. Short-term rental, some feel it is an asset because it can be seen as less disruptive. And I'll close.
Thank you. I think I heard all the relevant facts in there at the beginning. Is there a second?
Second.
Right. All in favor on the motion of the finding of fact, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. All right. Now, may I have a motion for approval of the variance?
Okay, one moment, please. I make a motion for the approval of the application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance that has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by Rob Lucas and Megan Anderson, owners of 625 Winchester Place, which is situated in Zone RD 19 Residential Duplex District. The applicants reside in the south side of duplex and are requesting a use variance for the north side to allow for short-term rental or lodging land use for this property located in RD 19, where rentals are limited to 30 days or more under the
Oops, sorry, Christina.
definition of household living. Please note this request will not change the zoning classification of the provision. Did I go out again?
It
Hey, is this
paused for
better?
a second, but it picked up and just sped through it. Could everyone hear that?
I
Did
think
start again?
yeah, why don't you reread it with the video off, please?
Certainly. Okay, so I made
Oops, shoot. Christina, you're breaking up again.
the approval of a variance for provisions of the ordinance has filed with the zoning.
Christina, can you hear me?
Hello? Oh, I lost something here.
Yep, shoot.
Hello?
I don't think you're getting enough reception to read the motion. Does someone have it up in front of them so that they could make the motion?
I don't, but I'm gonna second it. So if somebody else can,
Let's get it moved first.
okay.
Remy's ready.
I'll try it here.
Christina don't join.
Welcome back, Christina. I'll take it from here.
Thank
I
you.
make a motion to approve a variance for a provision of the zoning ordinance for 625 Winchester Place, which is situated in zone RD1 residential duplex district. To approve
Christina don't left.
the north, specifically the north side, to allow for short-term rental or large lodging use for this property, where rentals are limited to 30 days or more under definition of household living. Does that suffice?
That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's on the table. And that opens it up for discussion. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, sorry.
Nope, that's good.
I don't like the ordinance. I never have. But I understand why it's there. And I'm sure most people do.
Mhm.
And it can go both ways. It can infringe on somebody's rights to do what they want with their property. But we have all those other things that I can't build a skyscraper either on my property. So maybe my neighbors don't want a skyscraper. So I don't like it. I have a few properties. I'd like to be able to rent them Airbnb style.
Mhm.
But it doesn't matter what I like, because the law is the law. I might want to drive 65 and the speed limit's 55. Doesn't matter what I like. It matters what the law is. And I personally love your situation. It's admirable. In fact, I hope my kids take care of me as good as you're going to take care of your parents. So I'm going to tell them about this case so that they plant the seed and they figure this out for me. So I'm supportive personally, and I don't really like the ordinance. But again, it's not about my opinion. It's about what I've been charged to do as a member serving my community. And I think it's Mr. Likas is how you say it. I forget what board you're on, but you have to, I'm assuming you're on a board that serves the public good, and you have to weigh the public and the individual good and the rights. Okay. So I'm individually on your side. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to follow the law, and then I'm here to follow the 6 requirements that you went over in the 6 requirements for a use variance. And I have to humbly and respectfully disagree. I'll take a few points. The ordinance would not deprive the applicant for all practical purposes from using the property for a permitted use identified in chapter 4.1, which is what you can do with each zoning. So it doesn't deny you the ability to have long-term or permanent residence, a long-term rental or permanent residence. Doesn't deny you that if we don't grant you that today. The special circumstances or conditions that are particular, and this is specific in the wording here, I'm just reading it. It says to the land or the structure. So your unique situation is more human-based, and I'm sorry that we have to go from human to the inanimate, but this requires land or structural special circumstances. What I have to go by. This another one, granting the variance is the minimum action that will make it possible for the use of the land or structure. Again, it's not a land or structure issue. I agree that you're probably doing much better than the last people that owned the place. And currently it's not an adverse effect on adjacent land. I agree, but we don't know about the future. We all admit that things change. And that's why I asked the question about the intent of the ordinance, because the last one is the granting of a variance will be generally consistent with the purpose intent of the ordinance. And that's why I drilled staff early on in the conversation is what's the intent? The intent is not to have short-term, less than 30-day rentals. Whether I agree with that or not, or like it or not, or you like it or not, I have to go by these rules and vote by these rules. And so I'm a no based on that, even though I'd like to be a yes.
Thank you.
I can speak to my knowledge of the residential codes with more specific areas regarding rentals and rental properties with some of the work that I do with the nonprofits in the neighborhoods. And really from the rental standpoint, the 30-day policy really allows for the tenants of the structure to have the time to find another structure or dwelling to live in. And it creates for a more fluid transition between living arrangements. So on that note, I can say definitely that it's not the best circumstance that we would see with the ordinance that's in place to use that as the guiding post. I have great fealty and love for every part of the armed services and every service person, but I moreover have to look at the fact that let's say in 75 years, you guys decide to move out or something happens and it goes to the next grouping. It would be very easy and it's very simple for the circumstances of the one location to be turned in a negative way that neighbors over time do change and the behavior of individuals just can't be known. So based on that, I would have to say that I am going to be no as well.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Sorry, Jeremy. Can you give me a summary of what you just said? I've dropped out.
I just use the fact that with our as far as rentals, I've worked with the departments within the city in my nonprofit capacity on rental structures, and the 30 days allows for a fluid motion from one residency to another. And really the secondary point is to, not to belabor the fact, but in years to come, if something were to transition the home to another owner, it's not to say that now is going to be the same situation as 75 years from now.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. I too am gonna vote in the negative. In looking at these use criteria, I just want to echo the point that Jeff Carroll made a little earlier. When we're thinking about these criteria and looking at whether there is unnecessary hardship, it really is based upon the circumstances or conditions that are peculiar to the land. And while admittedly we're all sympathetic to this situation, I think that we really have to stick within the intent of these criteria and look at what we're asked to decide. And I don't see that this hardship is caused by this land. In fact, this is a district that has multiple duplexes. That's what's zoned to be here. And I do think that there's an expectation when someone moves into an area that's zoned for residential, that the residential character of that area will be maintained through the zoning code, that people will be long-term either tenants or owners in that area. So I do think that this is contrary to the intent of the residential. The exclusion for short-term rental is part of the intent.
Are you guys super firm on your nose? Because I think that, I mean, for us to be speculating 75 years into the future, and to not be taking into consideration the austere circumstances that people are navigating right now. We are literally living in a cityscape right now where in a building that I own, there's an entire encampment where people are living and lived during a pandemic and did not have in a Michigan winter. And these types of alternatives to short-term housing need to be normalized. The very relatable circumstances that this family are navigating in terms of trying to maintain income while trying to take care of their children, their small children themselves, and their ailing parents that live out of state. I'm very curious to know. I mean, when we talk about rights, our rights end where somebody else's rights begin. They have a right to navigate on all of the different layers of dimensions that they have to exist. They have a right to exist and to be able to navigate alternatives and circumstances and brainstorm and design circumstances for themselves that make their lives, sustainable. I'm voting yes for them because I would like to hope someone would vote yes for me when I was trying to locate ways to be sustainable as a single parent. I think that we have to start brainstorming in different ways. These are, when I think of precedent setting, I think that this is precedent setting on a lot of layers to create alternatives for us to start thinking in terms of human-centered design and not just hold ourselves, hostage to ordinances that were devised how long ago and under what circumstances and what were the intentions of people who devised those rules. Like, I'm not sold on that. So I'm willing to disrupt that on behalf of this family. I'm voting yes.
Okay. Is there any other discussion before we go to a roll call vote?
I was just curious because the conversation I had with Mr. Aldridge was that maybe it wasn't rezoning, it was just for this property, us as the owners. I don't know if that.
It is specific to this property solely. That's the case before us. Yes. Okay. Any other discussion before we move on? I think that we've had fulsome discussion on this tonight, and I do believe one point to come back to that was what was brought up earlier, is that this issue isn't going away. This is an issue that the city ought to think about coming to a decision on, because if we have every one of these cases that come through the zoning board, we're probably going to make decisions based upon being sympathetic to the applicants rather than looking at the zone district or the land itself. And we just don't actually, without sort of going outside of our purview, have the ability to do that. So while we might come to a result today, I believe that I would encourage the city, and Pete, if you could pass that back, to examine this issue, because as Remy said, as I guess I've heard other people say, there is a housing crisis. We are looking throughout the community at ways to explore being creative with that. I'm sorry to the applicants tonight that many of those issues might have come up in the context of your case when you're looking for a specific equitable action on our part. So that's my only comment. Back to you, Pete. All right. Could we have a roll call vote?
We'll start with Mr. Carroll,
No.
Doan, Christina,
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
yeah, we can hear you now. So
Transmitting? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
we can hear
me
you.
now?
I'm doing the roll call vote.
No.
Thank you. Vanden Hamburg. I'm sorry, I did
You're
not
on
see
mute,
that.
Beth.
No.
Harrington,
Yes.
Herpening,
No.
Lager.
No. I'm sorry, it did not, the variance is not granted.
Thank
Okay,
you for your consideration.
thank you, sorry. Are there any other agenda items tonight, Pete?
There are no additional agenda items tonight.
All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Jeff Carroll left. Rob Leak is left.